All right, and we're live. Hello, everybody. My name is Eric Maddox. I'm the co-host of Latitude Adjustment Podcast, and this is a live version of the show. We've done about 66 episodes at this point, and most of them are audio-only format, but you're watching kind of a new offering by my co-host, Laila, Mokhiber, and myself. And what else can I say? I'm a nervous talker, but I need to shift the attention elsewhere. So I'm based in Berlin right now. If you want to check out previous episodes that we've done on Lebanon, you can find those in the comments. We'll be posting those during the course of this interview. We've covered Lebanon and the Middle East and other places previously. And other than that, I think, latitudeadjustmentpod.com. All right, Laila, off to you.
Hi, everyone. So we decided to go live today because we want to talk about what's happening in Lebanon. First, of course, Eric and I express our condolences to those who lost lives and to anyone who's lost their home. It's reported there's been about 300,000 people made homeless as a result of the devastating explosion that occurred on Tuesday. I'm a Lebanese American as well as Palestinian, and I'm happy to be here co-hosting. And, as I've mentioned in previous broadcast, my work is focused on Palestinian refugees, but today we're focusing on the situation for all people in Lebanon. And with that, I'd love to just ask my guests to say their name and where they are from right now, and then we'll hop right into it. Can Rita go first?
Hi, my name is Rita Abalin. I'm also Lebanese American. I'm based in Beirut. I'm a photojournalist, and I've been living here for almost 3 years now, initially focusing on the displaced, and then focusing on the region and the revolution that was happening here. So I could pass it on to Muhammad now.
Okay, thank you. Hi to everyone. It's Muhammad from Lebanon, and I'm an activist since October 17, more practical on the ground, but also from before, trying to change and leading a group of young people and doing some campaigns for them. And beside that, I'm a humanitarian since 7 years, working on the Syrian crisis and refugees in Lebanon. So I'll be also telling you here more information from the ground about the explosions that happened in Beirut. Thank you.
Excellent. So I think I asked my first question by asking you to introduce yourself. So I'm going to actually kick it back over to Eric to kind of get a little bit more in depth.
Great, thank you. So to start off, I'd just like to ask, and I guess I'll start with Rita, but I'd like to address this to both guests. How were you engaged with what was happening in Lebanon before Tuesday's events? Because obviously there's a larger context for the tragedy that happened on Tuesday and that's unfolding now. So Rita, would you like to maybe start off? What were you working on in Lebanon before Tuesday?
Because of COVID-19, a lot of my work had slowed down. But before that, I was very engaged with the revolution and covering the stories of the revolution. And I'm a freelancer, so I don't work for anyone specifically. I pitch to different platforms. Most recently, during COVID, I was keeping in contact with people that had been in the revolution that were no longer welcome back into their homes. So I was working on that and keeping in contact with them. They were no longer welcome because they took part in it, and their families have been affiliated or loyal to the government or other parties. So I was doing that because COVID had slowed everything down. Before then, it was the revolution and people that had been part of the revolution who didn't have citizenship because only their mother is Lebanese, or the roadblocks, or those types of stories. Focused on the revolution mostly, and then things slowed down a bit. I think I answered your question. I don't know, did you? Did I make everything clear?
I think that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And Mohammed?
So as I mentioned first, I'm a humanitarian working with a Swiss NGO in Lebanon, and we do PSS, like psychosocial support for Lebanese vulnerable people and also for refugees. But as also mentioned, I've been dedicating a lot of my time for the revolution as a team leader for a group of youth in our area, and trying to organize awareness campaigns for them, and also get professors from universities to explain about human rights, about freedom, about liberty, how to express themselves in the streets, and also how to make a revolution in a peaceful way. And also, I was on the ground since the explosion happened in the previous few days, and until now, we are still cleaning up and doing a lot of things on the street.
And I know that your work goes back years, because I met you in, I think, 2016 in the Bekaa Valley, and you showed me around the Syrian camps, and you were working close to that issue as well. So, I mean, you've been working in a variety of areas for quite some time. Do you want to maybe share a little bit about your work with the Syrian community as well?
Yeah, so about my work with the Syrian community, we started from the beginning of the crisis. Our job was mainly like volunteers. We welcome refugees who were coming illegally through the mountain. It wasn't us like smugglers, but at some moments the smugglers just leave them on the mountain. And unfortunately, we had a lot of bad stories happening there, where one of the moments where we found one woman died frozen with her kid. After that, I was also like a field officer. We do assessments for the refugees, the settlements in the Bekaa Valley, and see what are their urgent needs. We've also did some education work until we ended up now with the Swiss NGO I just mentioned, doing psychosocial support through climbing and sports. We were also doing, I remember we did medical cases. We have assessed people who needed medical cases who couldn't afford, and then you or us, we look for donors who could help in that.
Yeah, I remember. I don't think we have time to go into the details now, but I remember kind of a moving experience that I shared with you in that area too, for sure.
Right.
All right, Laila, I think it's you're up.
All right. Thank you both for sharing that. You're doing both really relevant and unique work, and we're just really grateful to have both of you there in Lebanon assisting the people, whether they're Syrian, Lebanese, Palestinian, on the ground. And I hope you're also taking good care of yourselves during this time. I wanted to just make a quick note to any of our viewers. We have viewers, by the way, right now from Oregon, San Francisco, Qatar, Jordan, Virginia, Washington, D.C., and all over the place tuned in because they care deeply about what's happening and want to know how they can help. The first thing you can do is hit the share button so that more people could be tuned in. We have about 36 people watching. Let's get it to 100. The more people that watch this, the more people can be assisting with the needs in Lebanon right now. So I'd like to ask, and I'll go with Rita again first, and then Mohammed, how you were immediately impacted by the explosion, and how are you feeling right now?
So in the very beginning, I was just having a coffee with a friend in an area called Sodiko, which is I think about 4 kilometers away from the site, we heard what we thought was a crash. We thought maybe it was in the kitchen of the cafe. We were sitting outside because of social distancing, and we thought it was a crash, but then suddenly it actually was very quiet, and I think it's because of how loud it was. I can't really explain why it was very quiet, and things moved in very slow motion, but it was glass like flying, because my friend at that point had stood up to hear what the crash was. I was still sitting. I was up against the corner, and the pressure pushed me up against the wall. And I saw things flying, which were, I think, glass and paper and dirt, and it felt very much in slow motion because I was having so many thoughts in that moment. And then shortly after that, we went home to check on his home, and I had a rescue cat because I was afraid that the cat may have gotten thrown out of the apartment. We checked on our homes, and I got my equipment, and we went to Jemaizi, where I was photographing. And how am I feeling? I think I'm mostly in disbelief, and there are moments of where something happens, and I realize what has happened again. And there's moments of heartbreak and crying, of course, but for the most part, if I'm functioning, it's usually because I'm in disbelief. Honestly, I think it might take some time to really for that to settle down, for me to realize the capacity of what has happened.
Thank you, Rita. I can't imagine what it looked like in Jemaizi. Me and Eric have been watching videos from the various communities, and I've seen your photos on Instagram, and I encourage people to go look for those images and to understand just how much of an impact this devastating explosion has had, and the recovery is going to be long and hard. And I hope that you continue taking care of yourself throughout this. The people of Lebanon, both those there and those who in the diaspora, like, we pride ourselves on being resilient, but you don't have to necessarily be so resilient right now. It's okay to not be okay, because what you went through is absolutely not normal. And so just know that we are here as a whole global community to support you through that, whether emotionally or physically. But Mohammed, if you can again answer the question about how you were immediately impacted, where you were, and how you are also feeling right now.
Yeah, sure. To be honest, like literally, you can't find the specific words to express how terrifying the situation or how horrible it was. Especially for me, I was in quarantine. I was having my car fixed, and I was like leaving just a few minutes after the explosion happened, because it was almost in the same street, and that's why I really felt the kind of trauma. Until today, that's why I left Beirut today, just to have some time for myself to really relax, just to think well about it. I'm sure I'm not gonna experience or gonna get resilient soon, because it was horrible the moment I think where I was and how I moved, as if something just pushed me to leave from there. And when I was driving away, and it started it was like a bit of seconds before the first and the second explosion, we could hear something, but we thought that it's something normal or fireworks. And then the second one went up, so everybody was super scared on the street, and most of the cars started to hit each other. It was like a big chaos. Nobody could understand what was happening. It was really horrible to see people around you on the street. They already got the airbags opening on their faces. Some of them, the glass broke down on their faces. For the first seconds, you couldn't know what to do. If you could rescue people, if you could run away, if you could shout, call the ambulance. Seriously, in this moment, you could not give the impression or take the fast decision how to react. I really can't explain it well, but I don't know, automatically was motivated to go help or do something. But because of the horrible moment, I just decided to keep going, just drive away from Beirut, because it was really more than a war. And you could guess, and you could know from the articles that were published recently, that it's the third world biggest explosion happening. Even the governor of Beirut, he said, this has never ever happened in Beirut's history. Also, our parents, they said, we have witnessed a lot of wars, from the civil war to the occupation of Israel. This never happened. So yeah, for just also for a few days, I could feel the pressure inside my mind. Even I couldn't sleep well in the past 2 nights. And I've witnessed and heard a lot of stories from my friends who also getting through these moments as well. Yeah, it's horrible. You feel more touched and you feel more sad, because in this situation, even the hospitals couldn't accept a lot of people. Most of the hospitals also get destroyed. Yeah, we can talk about this more into next question, but yeah, that's really in short about it.
Before I pose my next question, I just want to say that I appreciate that you're both are willing to make the time and be so open right now. Yeah, if there's anything that you want to say that we don't get to, like I told you before we started, just know that we'll make space to cover anything you want to talk about. To the audience, I want to say that this is intended to serve 2 functions. It's an educational resource that you can share with other people to help them understand what's been happening since Tuesday, and probably before as well, to provide some political and social context, and also to direct people to how they can provide support in the form of donations or any other form of relief. So to that end, it will take a few minutes after this episode is done, but we're going to also post this in the form of a YouTube video on our website. And with that, we will include a bunch of information as far as additional educational materials, but also places where you can seek to make donations. So if you want to follow up, you can see some of that probably in the comments already. I'm noticing that some people have posted some links, but you can also go to the website, which is latitudeadjustmentpod.com/live. And you will see this episode posted probably within an hour of its conclusion, along with some of those additional resources. All right, so on to the next question. Rita, also back to you. And I know that you've touched on some of this already in your last answer, but what have you seen and what have you been doing since all this happened? And yeah, try, if you can, paint for us like a picture with words of what images you're absorbing on the ground and what stories you're hearing from the people that you're close to.
Sure. So what I'm seeing is a lot of people who are taking action, actually. A lot of young people were in Jamaizi cleaning with brooms and bags and boxes and helping each other out. People who are offering their homes to each other because there's so many people who are homeless right now. The first night when I was in Jamaizi, there were a lot of people leaving with their things because they were no longer able to stay in their home. And since then, like I said, there's been a lot of people taking action and doing things and cleaning the glass. I mean, there's sounds of glass being cleaned in my own neighborhood, which is about 10 kilometers away, almost every day. The thing I want to say, and maybe we can talk about this, like maybe through your other questions, is that this is really unfair. As Laila said, that the Lebanese are resilient and we're expected to be like so strong. We've been through so much, but we are exhausted. And we can talk about this a little bit more later about what the things that had happened even before this explosion that have exhausted us. But the military, the government, have done nothing. From my own personal perspective, from what I've been seeing, the military has been standing around, maybe blocking a street or two, maybe being around a building saying you can't walk around here, the building may collapse, walk around. But it has been people, everyday people, that are organizing and coming together and having tents and passing around water and cleaning and helping old people, old folks. I'm trying to think of other visuals, but for me, I've mostly been going to photograph, and I will mention this one thing. In Jamaizi, where you walk, there's a small street that you can go right onto the autostrad, the highway, and there's a small store. And on the first night, I saw a young man working in it, and he was telling me that he's staying open because he wanted to do whatever he can to help his boss. He's been working for this man for 23 years. And he said that his boss's wife and his middle child were likely not going to make it. They're in the hospital, were likely not going to make it. Since then, I have followed up, and luckily they've taken a turn for the better, and they're going to survive. But this is the kind of thing that's been happening: is someone who didn't have to be there. They could have closed the store. They could have gone home. But he wanted to help somebody else, somebody that meant something to him. And he said that, they live in the same building, that he's been like family to him. He was like in his late 30s, but he said that he's been working with him for about 23 years.
Yeah, guys, like as it sounds, like Beirut is really broken more than ever before. Like what I witnessed, I can just tell you how it started, the cleaning, when we went to Beirut. In the second day, actually, we were at the beginning, we got very excited to go help the people just directly after the explosion. And then the government announced that if you really would like to save more people, just stay home, not to have traffic for the ambulance coming and going. So that's where we decided to stay home. But the moment we went on the second day to check this like horrible disaster there, the people were very pale. Nobody wanted to talk to anybody. And like when you talk to the people, they said like, yeah, there are a lot of people who died, maybe physically, but now just show me somebody who didn't die by heart. Like they have lost kind of history, their memory, the pride of this wonderful Beirut, that they saw all this destruction. And even the people who were living there and heard something for the first time, they hear such a big issue for them. Yeah, and as you said, I'm not gonna say people here will quickly experience resilience. That's definitely not gonna happen. But what gives a bit of maybe remedy or just a bit of hope, the huge number of volunteers that you saw on the second day, they're trying to smile, they're trying to spread the peace and love among each other. However, these people, like, they rarely meet because, due to the political situation in Lebanon, we have a big gap in between the same culture here, actually, in Lebanon. Like, this disaster has put people together. They tried to spread this peace and love. They wanted to clean Beirut as quickly as possible because they really can't handle saying Mar Mikhail with these old, nice, traditional buildings where they have spent really a lot of nice time, because this street is all like clubs, nice places where you hang out, and you see it destroyed. So what I did, we went there, we started cleaning. But unfortunately, there was a place also where we had to all move away because we got some information that there are still dead people under the damage. That's where the moment the people, like, came down again, everybody was sad again. Some people wanted to see how they would get the people from down, but at the end of the day, yesterday, they get somebody alive after 15 hours. The day before yesterday, 15 hours of under the damage. This give like some more motivation to the people. They started to clean up quickly. They just wanted to give any chance to have more people alive, because in social media you see mothers and parents asking for their kids, and they still have hope that their kids or their relatives and friends are still somewhere under the damage, but they are still alive. Yeah, I mean, that's what we try to do, just to clean up and just try to get, I'm not gonna say take it in a positive way, but try to act a bit positive to keep the people alive, just alive, like breathing, I mean, but not alive in a nice way. Sorry, I really don't want to sound negative, but unfortunately, this is the reality from the ground.
Of course.
Yeah, don't be sorry for anything you say. We want you to speak your truth.
I have a follow-up too. I'd like to address some of the questions that are also coming in from people in the audience. And someone raises a good question, and that is, are there any concerns about breathing right now? I mean, aside from the fact that there's this pandemic that's in the air, I'm thinking back to like what happened with the September 11th attacks in the US and all the particulate matter that came as a result of the explosions there that have caused people health issues up to this day. Do you notice that people are they able to take precautions? Is there stuff in the air that's causing you any concern?
Do you want me to answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mohammed.
Okay.
I'm gonna let you go. So.
Okay, cool. Then you can also correct me or add your part. Yeah.
Mohammed, if you can hear us, your connection is not good. So maybe Rita, you could go ahead and please answer.
Sure. There definitely is a concern. People have been wearing masks, especially in the areas that are closer to the sites. And we are being told that if you're outside, that it's likely that you are getting toxins into your body. The unfortunate part is, even when you are inside my house, I have ACs in just the bedrooms. And it's been so hot, and electricity has not been helpful. So when I'm using the generator, I cannot have the AC. So I cannot possibly live in the apartment with it closed. So the doors had been open before, and whatever toxins came in. I take precautions when I'm outside, but unfortunately, when I'm inside, I can't do anything. I have to say that the people that were cleaning, Jemaizi and everything, they all had their masks on. When I'm walking around in other areas, it looked very much like when we were experiencing COVID only, and some people were taking precautions, some not, some are wearing their masks correctly and some not.
All right.
I'm sorry, I'm just sending the link to Mohammed so he can rejoin us again. Oh, actually, he's here.
Okay.
One moment. Thanks for bearing with us.
Oh, sorry,
Mohammed,
guys.
we have you back. Malish, we just wanted to,
we
passed over to, Well, can you tell us about that situation actually for a moment?
Yeah, maybe you could explain the internet.
Oh yeah, unfortunately, like seriously, in the past week, I don't know how it is now, but it's a bit better. But we only had 3 hours per day 3 hours per 24 hours electricity, and that's how it's happening. So we have the generator. It's called the mafia's electricity. Yeah, I maybe can answer the question. Maybe Rita already said something. There were a lot of information that telling that, hey, you should wear masks because there are a lot of toxic chemicals that went out of this explosion, which actually at the beginning you could smell something. Maybe Rita have mentioned that, but later on when you get used to it, you no longer smell. So people think that it's gone, like the smell is gone or the microbes is gone, but actually not everybody was wearing masks for corona. Like when you talk to people, the guys, the virus still exists, corona still exists, they say something like, which is now common, like who cares
Oh, I think we lost Mohammed again.
Just to provide a bit of context also to the people who are listening, I've spent about 18 months cumulatively in Lebanon, and this is about as good as an internet connection as I think I've ever had up to this point. So this is just kind of the reality, and it's going to, of course, be exacerbated by different elements of the crisis that were going on before Tuesday, and then as a result of what took place. So thank you for bearing with us. I think anybody who's familiar with Lebanon knows that this is just the reality.
Yeah, hopefully Mohammed can rejoin us because he has a lot of really important things to say. I wanted to comment. I saw some photos of doctors and nurses performing procedures in hospitals using the light of their phones because there wasn't electricity. I don't know, Rita, have you seen sort of images like that and heard anything about the situation health-wise and how people are still able to kind of treat both the growing number of COVID cases and the injuries as a result of this?
I mean, the hospitals haven't exasperated, and I've seen images where they were treating people in the parking lots. I haven't seen anything like that personally. I have not visited the hospitals yet. But even before this, there was a lot of pressure, and the number of COVID patients was growing already before the explosion. So there was already a need for medical help before. So I could imagine that it's gotten much worse. And the Wardi hospital, I believe it was hit very, very hard, and the person that was filming it would go from floor to floor, and the higher they would go, the worse that the damage was. So.
Yeah, I heard that in St. George Hospital, maybe 3 in total were actually completely gone. And in fact, one of my colleagues told me that the Haifa hospital in one of the Palestinian refugee camps was treating people, which I think is pretty amazing because Palestinians are some of the most fragile, I guess, communities in Lebanon, for those of us who are familiar with the context in Lebanon. So I thought that was a really amazing mention. They even said that the Lebanese Red Crescent, I guess, which operates with people from the camps, which is separate from the Lebanese Red Cross, is also trying to participate in the recovery relief. So it's amazing how people are coming together. We know Lebanon has a lot of political differences and a lot of sectarianism, and it's very interesting to see how this maybe is a unifying effort amongst the people. I also saw an interesting video where a woman had she was about to give birth, and there was just this really striking image of her sitting in the hospital bed with glass all over her, and miraculously she gave birth to a healthy baby, and both the mom and baby are okay. But I could not imagine what it would be like to be in that sort of situation. And I just was really struck by that. But Mohammed, we're glad you're back. I don't know if you can hear us because your image looks frozen. Can you hear us? No. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sure it's frustrating for him trying to come in and out of the studio. I'm going to drop his video again to see if he can rejoin. If he's not able to rejoin, Rita, we appreciate you kind of continuing this with us, and the conversation can continue. I don't think this will be the last of conversations that we have on Lebanon. But I guess I wanted to ask what you were seeing in Beirut and the general mood. I mean, you kind of touched on that already. Eric, do you have a kind of another question around that area that you'd want to ask?
Let's see, I have my list here. Yeah, I think that There were some questions from the audience, so I'm looking at your question that's up here next. Maybe we can just move on to discuss the food situation, distribution, things like this, if you want to go ahead and touch on it.
Yeah, somebody did ask in the comments how the food situation is in Lebanon right now, and perhaps who's doing the food distribution. I also know that people in the diaspora are wondering who they can contribute to make sure that food is still being distributed, especially knowing that the wheat supply may only last another month, or the grain supply. I think the grain, there was a warehouse where grain was being stored, and I think that also was lost in the explosion. What do you know about that, Rita?
Well, I'm not sure if it was completely lost, but I think we have to take into account that it was so close to the explosion. I don't know if it's edible or if it's poisonous. And what I did want to touch base about the port is that I'm not sure if everyone knows that the port, we don't really manufacture very much in Lebanon. We manufacture very little. And I think 80% of our supplies, and important supplies, are imported. And 60% of those are at the port. So we lost a great deal of that. As far as the food, there hasn't been a food shortage yet. I've gone to the stores and they have what they've had before. So they haven't run out for us to really have a gauge of what is needed, but it's very expected. It's expected that we are going to run out of grain. It's expected that we're going to run out of medical supplies. I'm not sure, Laila, if you asked did you want to know who was doing food distributions from organizations, or did you want to wait to speak about that later?
Yeah, well, definitely we're going to want to know more by the time we conclude this conversation about ways that people can be helping. But if there maybe is a place or two that you think people should be looking up or aware of. I see Mohammed is back. Let's try to get him back in. Mohammed, can you hear us?
I can hear you, but we really have a problem here. I'm sorry. I hope that is not going to
Do not be sorry. We explained that the electricity situation is what it is, and we're even impressed that we're able to have you both on for this long in the call. So don't worry about it at all. We were just asking Rita about the situation for food. Also, if there was anything that you wanted to add from a prior thought, we don't want you to feel like you can't add that in. I don't know if you're frozen or if you have a serious face right now, but you might be frozen. Okay. We will keep going.
All right, so should we touch on if you know of food distribution networks and needs? I mean, since we're on the topic, might as well cover it, I would imagine. So if you've got some advice you'd like to share, please feel free.
So I did write down the organizations I was going to mention, but maybe we'll mention the specific one now, and then maybe we can see if Mohammed rejoins. We can talk about the others. There is an initiative called Tadamun al-Nas, and that's the People's Solidarity, and they actually they had already been working during the economical crisis in COVID. They already had a list and people that they had already visited and followed up with and saw what their needs were. And now they are following up with them to make sure, because a lot of them were in Ashrafiyya and Mar Mikhail. And I don't think what a lot of people know that in Gemmayzeh is an area that, it's a night, it's a place that young people go to party and go to bars, but that was only about 15 or 20 years ago. The neighborhood itself consists of many old people. So in those areas, they're following up to see if people have lost their homes or if they need food supplies, food deliveries. So they're mapping that out right now and doing assessments, and they connect NGOs together so that the work isn't being overlapped, so that the needs are met. And right now, they're working with independent architects and engineers for the future, because a lot of people living in those areas, like I said, the old people had rent-controlled apartments, old rent. And what happens when things like this happen, as you would know from downtown with Solidaire, a lot of people lost those rights. So they're working with engineers and architects to ensure that this doesn't happen and that people can get their homes back or get some kind of reparation for what happened. So, but they do food deliveries, and my friend's aunt actually had gotten several food deliveries from them in Hayy al-Sallam in Beirut.
Thank you for that. It looks like Mohammed's back.
Yeah, it should work now.
Okay, we were just talking to Rita about food distribution, and as far as what's needed, but also who's working to help make sure that people stay fed. Are you familiar with any initiatives or places that people can support, Mohammed? Are you able to hear me, Mohammed?
Yeah.
Okay, it sounds like maybe it's a bit spotty at the moment. How about now? Okay. I think I just want to reiterate to the people who are listening too that I don't want to put our guests on the spot and have them be in a position where they need to explain everything that you can do to take action right now. We're covering the topic because it came up in the natural course of conversation. But again, I just want to emphasize that if you go to the link that we'll be posting to this on YouTube, just go to our website, and that is latitudeadjustmentpod.com/live. That will probably be posted within about an hour of this conversation concluding, and we will link to a bunch of places where you can offer your supports and also just educate yourselves more on what's been happening in Beirut in the last few days, the last few months, and frankly, the last few years. So just know that those resources will be made available elsewhere as well.
I want to add in, I know we want to talk a little bit more about context, the larger context in Lebanon, but I think something that we might have forgot to ask or mention for anyone who's watching this who really doesn't know much about what's happening is like the cause of the explosion. Somebody was commenting, in fact, our good friend Laura from New Mexico was saying, would you please address the speculation on social media that Israel is responsible for the initial explosion that set off the second and larger explosion? She's saying that she's concerned about rumors flying around. I know it's only been 4 days since what happened. So there's a lot of investigations that need to happen as to the cause of the explosion. What I've been reading and hearing is that it was the result of perhaps government negligence around the storage of ammonium nitrate at the port. So I just wanted to back up, Eric, and I'm just kind of putting this question in without on the fly, because I think that that's something that people are confused about. So Mohammed or Rita, if you want to talk about kind of your understanding of what caused it or things that you're hearing, because that's what the whole world seems to be talking about right now.
Yeah, maybe I can give a say about that if Rita lets me speak first. So I hope the internet will not go, the electricity, I'm connected to the phone now. Actually, the people here on the ground, they really lost complete trust in this government. So whatever information, whatever details go out of or issued from the government, the people will not understand it. And also the international community, they have a lot of, they are skeptical about the government. So this, there were a lot of reports that were showing that these substances were on the port since 2016. And the government, actually 2014, and the government took no action against it. At the moment, what's happening on the media and on the conferences that they are doing, they are all like denying the responsibility. Even the president today in his speech, he said, me as the president, I don't have the authority to take action or to tell them to change the place. They also declared that there's gonna be like court investigating in this, but unfortunately the people will not trust, and they are asking for international court or international community to come and investigate about that. For who it belongs, until now there is no clear information, to be honest, but the claim that it only came from Georgia, I guess, and going to Zimbabwe, this is just a trick and a fake information, or actually silly story the government has created, as they are always do, to back themselves. Yeah, I also, and a lot of people believe that that we have Hezbollah in Lebanon, and they can't deny actually that they also outside control a lot in the port. They have a lot of people working there, and they have a big power. And also because the Israeli government, once before, they said that there is this substance in the port, but now Hezbollah, they claim that it doesn't belong to them. unfortunately, very vague information. You don't know who to trust.
Yeah, it's interesting because I did read in a CNN article, I believe, that ammonium nitrate supposedly came from a ship or a vessel that was going, like you said, from Georgia to Africa. And I don't know if they confiscated it or it got abandoned, whatever. There was some information there about where it might have come from. I guess only time will tell, and hopefully there is proper investigation and answers are provided, because I'm sure people want them. But even more importantly, I guess we have to look at what's happening right now in some of the other situations that are contributing to the political and economic situation in Lebanon, and just makes the explosion just made the situation caused by those factors much more devastating. So Rita, I don't know if you wanted to add something to what Mohammed said around perhaps like the cause of the explosion.
What I did hear is that there were workers, and again, I actually don't trust anything that the government says either, but that there were workers doing some welding near fireworks, and that went off, and it was close to the ammonium nitrate. What I do want to, the point I really want to make though is that how close the port is to people's homes. You know, that's like Jamaizi is, I don't even think it's a kilometer away. You know, it's densely populated, and how little they cared about our bodies because they stored it there for that long and didn't think twice. And like we can talk about theories, and there has been a lot going on. You know, videos that are saying, oh, like, do you see a rocket? And but the bottom line is that we're living in a country where the government, our leaders, do not care about their people. And if they really cared, that would never have been there, and it wouldn't have happened, and it could have been preventable. People who are dead are now could have been alive today.
Yeah. What should everybody knows as well. So when there were two explosions. The first one, there was only fire and smoke, and the firefighters came to the port, and they went directly to extinguish the fire. And unfortunately, the responsibles or the officials of the port, they did not inform them that there is ammonium nitrate there. However, that they knew, and as now everybody is saying, all the firefighters who died, and some of them who are still maybe under the, or they took them recently from under that damage, you are responsible because you could have told them just evacuate the place because we have ammonium nitrate there. And they just died because like they were innocent, they were just trying to take the fire away, but they didn't know what was inside, unfortunately. And yeah, as Rita mentioned, like this is there is no way you could negotiate with the government. Why should they be in a city? You know, why it's very close to the people where they are living, and it's a huge amount, 250,000 tons. Like, because of that, guys, maybe you could have seen a lot of pictures, a lot of videos, what happened to Beirut. This wonderful Beirut, half destroyed, completely destroyed. What you see in pictures and photos and videos, they are nothing compared to what is on the ground. Maybe you could feel, but you could only see in photos, but on the ground, you have the feelings, you see, you act, you react. It's way more horrible than what you see. Nothing can clarify, or nothing can give the government a time to clarify themselves. And now why the people are also angry, if the parents of the victims who are under the damage, because they say after 6, we stopped the rescue team going there, and there was a time that the people were asking there should be a rescue team searching 24 hours, and the government didn't allow. And maybe you have read also about the Netherlands team, that they are still not, they are specialists. They came to rescue, and they are not allowed to go to the port. A lot of, I'm not gonna call it gossips, actually, it's reality. The government is hiding a lot. Why don't we have 24 hours searching for wounded people or dead people, whoever? Because these mean a lot for us. These are just regular people. If there was a son of a politician or a relative, they would be searching 24 hours, but only because they are regular people. Unfortunately, like you have witnessed when the French president came to Lebanon, and he went to the street, and everybody was like, we need somebody to trust. We need somebody who we can follow. We don't need a president. We need a leader who really cares about this small country, about the economy, about our health. You as a president, he didn't go to the ground. He only went to the port with a lot of bodyguards, and they stopped the highway, and everybody was in their car under the heat, only for His Excellency, the president, to pass and go see the damage. However, the people were just dying, and a lot of them were still under the damage, and he didn't take serious actions. Today, they only some of the journalists, they asked that the people need international justice to investigate. He said, no, like that in this pale way. No, we will just have it local investigation. They don't want to take it, seriously what the people want on the ground. Like, you saw how they welcomed Hollande and how they fired the Minister of Justice. And this government, a lot of people say, yeah, like you could have given the trust for this government, or this government is new, you can't blame them. Of course we should blame them, because they got a lot of reports in the past months that there is ammonium nitrate in the port. Just go and take action. They took zero action.
I think for me, I know that people are going to have their theories about who might have been behind this, if it was a plot, if this was intentional. I mean, where I'm at with this is just what I'm digesting from different news sources, and the most plausible and obvious truth is awful enough by itself. And it seems to be that this is really just kind of the perfect and most grotesque metaphor for a culture of abusive neglect and corruption up to the highest levels in the Lebanese government. And from what I understand, there were, I think, 6 different letters of appeal from the person actually in charge of the port between when these ammonium nitrate, tons of ammonium nitrate were left there by this vessel in 2013 up until now. 6 different attempts to appeal that were completely ignored.
Exactly.
So it's awful enough by itself to take that information in and its consequences, but to recognize that in some ways this is actually just kind of a distillation of so many other things that people have been protesting against, going back to the "you stink" and before that, like protests.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my quick take on the current situation. I don't know if there's some sort of conspiracy behind this. I tend not to go there until I have compelling reason to. It just looks to me like this is a government that is in so many ways just holding its people back from the incredible potential that Lebanese demonstrate, not just at home, but everywhere in the world. That's the biggest tragedy to me.
Yeah, maybe you have mentioned why these people are tired, because can you imagine around 30% of your population is 30% unemployed of your population, whether in the US or wherever you guys are watching from. Just imagine that half the population of your country is below the poverty line. Can you just imagine? This is only 2 reasons, a lot of reasons why the people are revolting here against this, because this explosion, this is the 3rd biggest explosion in the world, and the government until now, they have arrested nobody. They didn't show the people. You can show the people and cool them down by just getting people to jail, because there are a lot of people who are clearly responsible. It doesn't really need courts or judges to take decisions. There are clearly a lot of people who were involved in hiding all this information from the people. Or this could show, that the government will do something, but they will not.
Just to add one more thing, that there's somebody poses a really important question that I think even if we can't answer it, we need to at least raise it.
Right.
And that is anything being done to see if this is happening elsewhere? Like, are there other storage depots of potentially hazardous, toxic, explosive substances elsewhere in Lebanon that might not follow quickly on this, but who knows? Like, I spent 18 months in Beirut between 2012 and 2016, and so a good portion of that, this ticking bomb was sitting right there. How many others are there in the country? I can't help but wonder.
I'll just say something and go back to Rita. I'm sure she has something to say. I personally believe there is this one place that now is shown to media because it exploded and a lot of people died because of it. But we have a militarized party in Lebanon that nobody denies that they are the power in Lebanon, and they open a war whenever they want, and they go have attacks outside Lebanon whenever they want. And that's why we totally believe that there are a lot of weapons around the country owned by this party, and we don't know when another storage like this ammonium nitrate would explode somewhere in the city. So we believe, like, the last thing that we believe in the country is the army. But the army, until now, they still didn't show something serious. We asked the army, the Lebanese army, to go and take action against all these militarized parties, especially Hezbollah, and put their hand on their storage weapons, because if this explodes, this is not gonna kill specific people, it's gonna kill all the people around, because the people who died in these explosions, they're Muslims, Christians, whatever, different nationalities. We have Bangladesh, we have Syrian, we have Sudanese, we have Lebanese. We have different nationalities. So yeah, I totally believe there are more than this place, this place. Because when you were in Beirut, let me ask you a question. When you were in Beirut, you always hear people shooting, right? If you get a baby, you shoot for him. If your son graduates, you shoot. If you do something good, you go and shoot. That's like, you see weapons everywhere. This is maybe a small weapon, but there are a lot of big weapons as well, which could lead to a civil war, could lead to a damage like what happened in the 4th of August, or any other disastrous issues.
Yeah, and the question of, you raised the issue of Hezbollah and its power in the country. In my limited understanding of Lebanese politics, because I always embarrass myself when I try and weigh in on the subject for more than about 30 seconds. But my understanding is, the army has historically kind of played the role of referee, and Hezbollah is the heaviest hitter. So the idea of trying to disarm Hezbollah with using the Lebanese army just sounds like a daunting and very frightening task. I don't know.
It is definitely. Say something. You can't just tell the people, hey, dear Lebanese, we are the army, and to be honest with you, we can't control this. So that people could do something, could ask the international community, come and do something. We want to live here in Lebanon. We don't want to migrate. But we want to live peacefully. Who says we want to open wars? Who said we want to go fight outside Syria? In Lebanon, there are 18 sects. There are a lot of parties. There have, let's say, 50%, or at least more than 50%. They don't want any armed groups other than the Lebanese army. Else, let's go live somewhere outside the country, which we don't want. Sorry, I talked a lot.
So sorry, I'm sending some notes. People are contacting me right now as we're speaking about ways to help.
I can manage I can MC while you're taking questions if you want. All right.
Well, I just want to note that we only have a few more minutes left. Yeah. We've talked about a lot of really important stuff, and there's so many questions happening in the comments, which I'm really encouraged to see, because that means people want to know more. And before I pass it back over to you, Eric, I see 70 people are watching this, which is our largest live viewership ever. And people have been coming in and out. So I think the overall has probably been hundreds, if not 1,000 viewers throughout the hour. Please press share. It's a really critical way to amplify the voices of Mohammed and Rita, which represent so many people in Lebanon. And we need the comments that are happening in the questions below to lead to further discussion, so that we can all be doing things to support the relief efforts and just the larger situation in Lebanon, because we do have the opportunity to do so. So back over to you, Eric.
Yeah, and I would just add to that point that, we might have a few dozen or a few hundred people that are watching this while it's live, but thousands have watched these things in the past after the fact. So when you share this, it's something that people can watch later as well. And again, the idea for those who've joined us not from the beginning, the idea behind this conversation is to first educate the public, and also, along with that, to point them toward resources so that people can be mobilized to offer immediate support. Because as anybody who's ever followed a disaster knows, like the first few hours and days are really critical for getting mobilized. So on to our next questions. Where are we here? So Yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of covered this question of what do people need to understand about the current situation in Lebanon, and the fact that this is not an isolated incident and in some ways emblematic. Again, maybe the perfect awful metaphor for some systemic issues that have been going on since forever in Lebanon. Laila, do you want me to ask this question? I think we're on 7, just to make it clear where I'm at. Okay, so yeah, who are, if we can, and I mean, we're at a point like Mohammed was pointing out, like 30% unemployment. I mean, everybody is vulnerable to some degree, except for maybe a very small minority of elites in Lebanon who can insulate themselves with their wealth or just leave the country. But in a way, everybody is vulnerable. But let's identify who are the most vulnerable right now in Lebanon. And I get that this is a subjective answer that might even upset some people if certain groups are left out. But if you can help us as people who are there on the ground interacting with the people there, who do you think are the ones most at risk, of getting exposed to health crises, whether it's stuff that's stemming from the explosion or just COVID or other issues, as well as food shortages and other forms of scarcity? Who are the most vulnerable people? Rita, would you like to take that question first?
Sure. I think one thing I want to point out is that what was middle class 6 months ago is now poor, because people lost a lot of their money that they had in the bank because the lira has completely plummeted, and anyone who's watching can look into that, so I don't take up too much time. So when you have someone who is middle class who's searching in garbage right now to find any cleaning supplies that, that maybe it has a little bit left or anything that they can eat, you have to think about who is the person who was jobless before, the poor Lebanese who was jobless before. And if this is what's happened to the middle class, you need to think about all the residents in Lebanon, aside from the Lebanese, the refugees, the Palestinian camps, the Syrian refugees in the Palestinian camps, and the migrant workers, the foreign domestic workers who are being dumped really at their embassies, and their embassies are not protecting them at all. So these are the most vulnerable people, and the LGBTIQ community, because a lot of them are going to be homeless right now, and they've lost their safe space basically. So the most vulnerable have been vulnerable before, but it's much more extreme at the moment. And we can, I have a couple lists of people, but organizations, but I don't know if you guys want, with the timing, I don't know if you want me to talk about that now, or we could put it on the YouTube.
If you have a few that you can get through, I would say, yeah, go for it. And we'll also include it.
Okay, so I mentioned Tadamun al-Nas before, but I want to mention Basmi and Zaytouni. Basmi and Zaytouni, they provide shelter, food, medicine. They're actually a Syrian organization that started in Shatila, Palestinian refugee camp. And they are helping Beirutis right now. There's Egna Legna, and they are run by Ethiopian women. They support migrant domestic workers affected by the blast and with medical needs, food, clothing, and they're trying to identify through social media who has been missing among their community. There's always the Lebanese Red Cross and Mosaic Mina. They are a LGBTIQ organization, and they started the assessments for the needs of the community now. So they should have more information in the coming days.
Thank you. Those are excellent recommendations. And I think a lot of our people who are watching have been wondering who they can support. So thank you for your personal recommendations. Mohammed, if you can also kind of chime in and talk about who you see as the most vulnerable communities right now, what they might need. I also don't know if you mentioned this, Rita, but of course you said several times throughout the hour about the elderly and the people in Beirut who, we know our older folks aren't able to fend for themselves as well on their own. But if you could talk about some of those groups, and Mohammed, maybe some ways that we could be helping those populations.
Okay, I'm on.
See, I think there may be a delay. I'm not sure.
No, I think Mohammed's muted.
Right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to unmute your microphone. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, cool. Just to clarify for everybody that in Lebanon now, yeah, as you mentioned, almost everybody is vulnerable because we lost 80% from our currency. That's why everything is super expensive for anybody now. But what I recommend definitely first for the people who got affected by the explosion, which is around 300,000 families are homeless, and these are getting help by mainly the NGOs, which I also have worked for Best Man Zaytouni before, and I really recommend it. Rita mentioned, and the Red Cross, also UNHCR is trying to do really good work, not only for the Lebanese, but also for the Syrians as well, because there are some Syrian neighborhood who is also living around Jaitawi over there. Yeah, beside the NGOs Rita mentioned.
I do want to mention, you said 300,000 are homeless. This is a country of 4 million Lebanese, maybe 6 million with all the refugees and migrant workers that are being hosted by the country as well, who cover, Lebanon's been hosting more refugees, I think, than any other country in the world. And they're going through this situation. So I'm glad that you made mention of them. I also want to make my own personal plug, of course, to my own work, which is with UNRWA USA. We're launching an urgent relief fund for those Palestinian refugees in and around the camps in Beirut and around the country. Other groups like ANIRA, which people have mentioned in the comments, and UPA are focused on trying to bring relief to both Palestinians and Lebanese. So I would encourage you to look to that. We're going to put a comprehensive list. I also recently, with a friend, put together a form where people could submit trusted resources. I linked it in the comments. I'll link it again so that we can have one centralized place, because some other people asked in the comments if there's a place to go to. There's a couple efforts I see of people trying to centralize links, just like we saw in the Black Lives Matter movement. People wanted to find anti-racist resources, because we do know it's a lot of work to stay abreast of this information. It's really hard, whether you're living through it or even just trying to learn about it. It is a lot. So we really appreciate those of you who are taking the time to educate yourself and then try to make action. Even if your action is helping other people learn, you don't have to do everything to be supporting even those in Beirut. If you're not able to do things on the ground and help clean up because you have to support yourself and your family in other ways, like everyone has to do what's right for them. All that matters is that we're thinking about this and doing what we are able to do and not being apathetic to the situation. Eric, I'm going to kick it back over to you. I know we're just over 1 hour. I do have a few more minutes that I can be on this call. I'm in a regular work day, so I have to go back and shift gears to my work once this is over. And I'm really grateful to my organization for allowing me to do things like this alongside the work that I do.
All right. So, we had one other question here on our list. I mean, I've got plenty of others if we had more time, but I want to make sure that we highlight this. And some of this, I think, is already naturally come up in the course of conversation, but let's make sure that we highlight what specific things are needed, materially and otherwise. I mean, is there a need for medical supplies? If so, certain kinds. People need masks.
Eric, you somehow muted yourself, so we don't hear you any longer.
How much of that did you catch?
You cut off at masks.
Okay, do people need masks? Do people need foodstuffs, formula for babies, powdered milk, things like this, specific kinds of medication? What are the things that are in short supply? And maybe it's all of this. I don't know. But I just want to get people thinking, not just what they might be able to provide us in the way of cash. And sometimes that actually is the best thing that you can possibly do, is just send money and get it to the people who can then purchase things. But if there is actually like a shortage of actual goods that can be brought across the border or something somewhere, then maybe that's something else to consider. So I guess help us understand, if you can, specifically what needs to get to the people right now.
I'm going to let Mohammed answer the question, because I think you already answered it for me, and that is everything. The port is gone, so there's everything, but I think we just have to make the priorities of the things that are most important, which are food and medical supplies. And I mean, I think now, like, even people may need safety equipment while they're going into these homes and clearing them out. So maybe things like helmets, or even equipment that will help them clean or break things like hammers. But I think the most basic are the things that are most needed. But I'll let Mohammed answer that.
Yeah, thank you. So what I I think it's really needed now. It's a psychological first aid, to be honest, because a lot of people are in big shock now. You can give them a lot of food, you can give them also medicine, but first aid is really super crucial at the moment. And what is needed now, really, medical equipments, any medicine could be very helpful now, because Lebanon, Rita should know, that is in shortage of dollars, and that's why we had a lot of medicine missed in Lebanon, because we couldn't import it from abroad. So I think contacting hospitals at this moment is very important, to ask them what they are in need for, and also the Red Cross will give you a lot of important information. As many people have lost their houses and they are gone out, I guess also like mattresses, blankets could be very helpful at the moment beside the food. Maybe it could also be a good idea, but just to know who to give the money in cash. But I think it's like, because we have been doing this since past 7 years, we always do an assessment on the ground, see what the people need, and then we do the distribution. And that's why we always prefer that the money goes to the organization, and the organization that does the assessment by itself, and do the distribution based on that.
A concern that I also have is that, I mean, the Lebanese are coming together yet again in solidarity and self-organizing, and that's inspiring, but also unfortunate that it needs to keep happening, and that they need to keep picking up the slack for where their government is letting them down. So when I see these moments of like inspiration, I also like it's kind of sickening in my stomach as well, because I realize this is not something that the people should be left to have to handle on their own. And one of the concerns that I also have going forward is that, because this is happening in the middle of a pandemic, and you have immediate loss of homes for so many people, it's great to hear that people are being taken into other people's homes. That's also going to impact what? Social distancing, right? And you're going to have people who have not been cohabitating together now on top of each other in close quarters, and then doing who knows what as far as relief efforts, or just trying to earn a living and feed their families during the day. And I wonder about things like testing kits, which I'm sure were already in very short supply, and ways to address people's medical needs if they come down with COVID, as well as other conditions. So just, I mean, not to introduce just another like thing to be depressed about, but I think it's important to point out that this might be yet another element to the crisis.
If I can add to that, just to kind of sum up, because I know we're going to have to end our broadcast in just a moment. Anyone who's watching, there are going to be links in the description. There's already some links in the comments. There's going to be links on our website, latitudeadjustmentpod.com, where you can donate relief money. That means donations of any amount you can afford to whatever organization is doing the things you care about, whether it's food, medical, or otherwise. So some organizations, like the one I mentioned I work for, is going to be providing cash assistance to refugees because of the very large economic, near total financial collapse of Lebanon. If you are on the ground in Lebanon, I think it is encouraged that you donate blood if possible to help those who are suffering health impacts from the explosion. And in terms of these larger issues, hopefully some medical organizations that you could be donating to will address those equipment needs and things like that. And so we'll see what happens in the coming days and weeks in terms of response. We'll continue to share information as at Latitude Adjustment Podcast, because we care deeply about this issue. We want people to feel that they have the information needed to be able to effectively assist. But because we have to wrap up, I want to extend my sincere gratitude to both Rita and Mohammed, who are living there right now. They're in Beirut. They're being surrounded by this, and they're 4 days after this, one of the worst things that has ever happened in our history on the planet. They are willing to share their voices. And I see the sun is even going down. You can see it's darker in both of their apartments because it's nighttime. And so thank you for taking an hour to do this and taking time away from the things that you're doing to help your fellow Lebanese, to help the rest of us in the world understand. It's very generous of you. And we're hoping that you see us as friends and allies throughout this recovery period and beyond. And to Eric, thank you for making this space and for inviting me to co-host this conversation with you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you to all of our guests.
Thank you.
So should I add just a quick closing thought as far as links, things like that? So Laila already mentioned, I think, where you can find some of the additional information we'll be providing, but just to reiterate, go to latitudeadjustmentpod.com/live. We'll be reposting this video format of the podcast, and also links to organizations suggested by Rita, by Mohammed, by Laila, and myself. And if you want to provide suggestions in the comments, we'll take those into account too. So just know that this is intended to be a resource. Go check the website within about an hour of us ending this, and all that should be posted. All right. Thank you to everybody who's taken time out of their days to learn more about how they can provide support, emotionally, financially, and otherwise. I want to reiterate, my heartbreak is a place that I've called home, and where people have welcomed me into their homes more times than I can remember over the many months, and I think close to a year and a half that I spent in Lebanon, principally in Beirut. My heart goes out to the Lebanese people as well. I hope that goes without saying. And I'm very grateful that we have two amazing guests who are willing to, in the middle of this crisis, give their time to help educate us and our audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.